Thanks, TEDx, for putting me on after Tom Izzo, otherwise known as Lansing's basketball Jesus. That's great. But if Tom's still here, tall redhead trumps basketball coach, my friend. Sorry. This is what it is. I feel like I know a lot of people here today, which is super exciting. Give me a round if we know each other. That's sweet. Tell me if you knew me 5 years ago, those same people, because it can't be new people. I forgot about Lori, damn it. I didn't think anybody was going to know me except for my wife, and I was going to tell you that, not that you didn't count, because you count a lot. Not in this situation. It wasn't because I was like a weird or a jerk or anything. I was just a hard person to know back then. I had an address here, but I didn't necessarily live here. You know what that means? Like, I wasn't a member of the community. I grew up here too, and I'd been here for, I had been back in Lansing for about 10 years, and people thought I just sprouted out of the ground like 24 months ago. I was really defined by my job, which at the time I was working for a lot of West Coast gaming companies. I had a pretty cool gig. I was an executive in the mobile games business. I worked, whoa. I just designed that, isn't that great? That's pretty sweet. If that doesn't give you a seizure, you can see that I worked on some pretty cool stuff. And some of my clients were some A-list players, like Square Enix, Konami, Tecmo, Digital Chocolate, Real Networks. And when I started in this business, Snake was like the hotness, if anyone remembers Snake. That was like the one of 2 games you could play on your phone. It was the Angry Birds of its time. So I knew who these companies needed to talk to, and I knew what made their products how I could take their products from good to great. And that meant a lot of money. And so that was worth a lot of money to them, which means I was balling. I just turned it off. Isn't that awesome? Superpowers. Oh. I lived in this giant apartment. It was like 1,400 square feet. That bottom room there was my office. It was like very Tim Burton. It had a desk and a laptop on it. And you'd walk in and it was like echoey. We had a gourmet kitchen, which I made coffee and oatmeal in. Except for Tuesday nights, those are chicken nugget nights. I could get by with a hot plate, I did not need a gourmet kitchen. Bought a new car. Everybody does that when they get a new job, right? Except I bought one every 18 months. That's perhaps a little too much, considering my commute was this. I could have gotten away with something much simpler. I went to $20 a drink places with $20 a drink people. That was the life I was leading at the time. I traveled so much. You go to a hotel and you see those little pads of paper like Hilton Garden Inn. Who uses these? I used them because I would write the name of the city I was in next to my bed so that when I woke up in the middle of the night trying to figure out where the hell I was that day, I knew. Wake up, oh, Kansas City. Knew what I had to do the next day. The TSA guys actually knew me by name. I'd go through the Capital City Airport, and we'd talk about Call of Duty and stuff, and then they'd still search me. It was like, yeah, it's a cool level. Yeah, right on. It's the beard. If you knew me back a little further, that was going to be a placeholder image, but then I figured that kid would find me and beat my ass for taking him out of the presentation. He's like such a little toughie. Apparently I was a little Scandinavian dock worker. But I was a single kid, a single mom, And we had a really simple life, you know. We had a black and white TV in the 80s. My favorite toy was outside. It wasn't that we had like a half empty or half full cup. We just had a cup. We had something in it, and that was good. We didn't need any more than that. So back to my travels around the world. I met this jazz musician named Sam Rivers. Does anybody know who Sam Rivers is? Not very many. It's all right, my knowledge of jazz was a little weak at the time as well. I had that on tape, and I played it out. It was so good. Sam Rivers, in 1964, played with a few people I think more of you will be familiar with. One of them is Miles Davis. The other one is Herbie Hancock. Yeah. And then there's this kid named Tony Williams, who was a professional drummer at age 13. They came together and formed like Jazz Voltron. It was ridiculous. That kind of stuff doesn't happen anymore. In the 70s, he was a pioneer of the New York jazz loft scene. Studio Rivby was the hottest joint in town and had featured regulars like Quincy Jones. It was the epicenter of what was happening in jazz at the time. He wrote over 500 compositions, 30 symphonies. He's been nominated for 2 Grammys. And when I met him, he was in his 80s, and he was playing a show that night. Now, when you see a guy who's in his 80s and he's got a tenor saxophone, that's an alto. You don't need to correct me. But at the time he had a tenor saxophone, he was getting on stage, I was like, I'm about to see Kenny G's grandpa play. I wasn't too thrilled. But the Sam Rivers Trio takes the stage at this rock and roll joint in Orlando called The Social, and they tore it up. It was ridiculous. He had a stool, and it was like, he was just ripping it up the entire time. He would yell at the end of some of his pieces and fire up the crowd, who ranged from 21 to 81. Everybody was loving on this. It was amazing. It was one of the best shows I've ever seen in my life. So afterward, I had to ask him. I was like, dude, what makes Sam Rivers Sam Rivers? He gave me 3 pieces of advice. He said, you have to be an original. You have to keep contributing. And the secret to life is to eat half of your food. I was like, bro, I'm trying, but feels like a cheap shot. And it was good advice, and I heard advice that day, but I didn't listen to it. You know, the difference between listening and hearing, the act of versus actually having it impact your life, it's just the act of that day. So remember all this stuff? I went back to doing that. Still had the ridiculous loft. Still had the car. It made even less sense after I met this guy. And through all of that, I just kept doing what I was doing, but I found myself, I was getting more and more unhappy with my job situation. And when you get really unhappy with your job, what starts to happen? You start to suck at your job. And so I found myself on the chopping block at a couple places for the first time in my life. Never been fired before in my life. I didn't even know how to take it. I was like, what do we do from here? Do I shake your hand, or what happens? But I still had other things on the horizon. I was like, those were like my Bibles back in the day. I was like, yeah, if it's in GQ, I love it. So it came down to either I was going to have to move out west to essentially the capital of my lifestyle, or stay in Michigan and make some serious changes and reinvent myself. So I woke up one morning, and it was literally, I woke up one morning, maybe from a movie you've seen. You just decided all that after eating your muffin? Yeah. I woke up, I was eating my muffin, drinking my coffee, and I had what alcoholics like to refer to as a moment of clarity. I turned down a financially awesome job in Los Angeles and decided to stay in Michigan. And I started doing some things differently. moved out of a 1,400 square foot loft, moved into a 700 square foot house. That's a literal eating half of your food, consuming half of your stuff. If you add, by the way, 1,400 and 700 together, you get 2,100. That's the average size of the American household in the United States. I got back to being original, stopped letting my peers influence me. I cut the subscriptions to GQ, details. And the things I owned stopped owning me. You keep contributing? Well, I had to start, because the only thing I contributed to in the past was my 401k. So if I'm going to live here, I want it to be a place I want to live. And I think I'm off to a pretty good start. I finally listened to some good advice that I heard one day. And it took me a long time to get there, but listening is better than hearing. Sam Rivers, by the way, is now 87. He's going to be 88 years old this year. He's still getting booked to play shows. Plus, I have an awesome wife who helped me see something. Thank you. She helped me see that it makes a hell of a lot more sense to chase the things that make you happy than it does to chase the things that pay you to be miserable. Thank you.